is another episode of the Box and One podcast. Thanks for joining us. It's been a little bit of a long layoff. I think it's been probably like 4 weeks since we've done an episode. Life sometimes gets in the way. Two of us have children, and it's been a rough few weeks for myself. Azam, I think you have a 5-6 month old, so I'm pretty sure for you
5.5.
been. Yeah. So it's not easy, but thanks for joining us again. Make sure you subscribe to our channel on YouTube. Hit the little bell so you get notifications whenever we put some content out. Also, make sure you subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you consume your podcast. We really appreciate that. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, at Box in One Pod. We love to hear from you. Any ideas, feel free to message us, or just, if you just want to talk, reach out. I'm sure we can work something out. So a little bit of a special episode today. This is only our second time having a guest. Last episode was our first one. Check that one out. Chris Walder was nice enough to join us and talk a little bit Raptors. So today we're joined by Patrick Benson Jr., who's been a contributor on Forbes, currently a contributor on Sports Talk ATL, Busting Brackets, The Red Zone. But most importantly, he's got a book that just dropped recently called Kobe Bryant Sneaker History, 1996 to 2020. So we're really excited to have him talk a little bit of Kobe Bryant, the book, and just anything else that comes up. Pat, welcome to the show. Did I get everything right?
Hey, man, you nailed it. Thank y'all so much for having me. Like I was explaining before we got started, I was going through researching different podcasts I wanted to reach out to and, listening to them beforehand to make sure I like their vibe, whether it's like sneakers or basketball or whatever. And I heard y'all, I was like, oh yeah, these are my guys. So I hit you up on Instagram and I was like, man, I really hope they consider having me on. So I'm nerding out right now. I'm excited to be here.
It was pretty much instant. So I jumped all over the opportunity. I saw it. I'm like, yeah, we got to have this guy on. And by the way, Pat, I'm going to send you the money for the nice little words that you gave us right now. But yeah, we're really excited to have you. And it's what you've managed to accomplish, I guess, during this pandemic, which it's a pretty short time. You managed to write an entire book. Take us through that process. What's that like? How did you get started?
Yeah, it was like a mental marathon. It was a labor of love. Starting from the beginning, Kobe passes away in January and it just hits me like a ton of bricks. Kobe was our guy, coming up in our generation. And then the first few pages of the book, I explained my motivations for writing it. The night before Kobe and Gianna's public memorial, the only other Lakers fan I know, 20-year friend, passes away in a car wreck. Lose my day job, lose my side jobs, lose my day job finally on July 1st, first day of the fiscal year at the place I was working at. And my family, fiance, they encouraged me. They said, take some time, do what you want to do, just try to figure it out. And it didn't take me long. I was like, I want this to be my tribute to Kobe. If I don't write anything else ever again, like I want this to be it. I want this to be able to stand alone. And so it was a mental marathon. I enjoyed it. At times it was really cathartic. I was getting out, all these feelings I had, but at the same time it was maddening. And, it definitely gave me insomnia. Like a good bit of this book was written between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. And just thank goodness for coffee and, just got through it somehow. And I'm really excited that the final product's here.
Yeah, so it's available, if I'm not mistaken, it's available on Amazon. Anywhere else? How can people get it? Just put that out first.
Yeah, it's on Amazon Canada as well, and it should be on Barnes and Noble within the next week or so.
Cool. Yeah, I was actually checking it out. I'm definitely gonna order it. It's a long book, right?
Yeah, it's all right. It's like 50,000 words. It's 147 pages. However, like it's a 6x9, so it's if you're not a great reader like me, I think you should be able to get it done in like a week or two. I'm not like a huge voracious reader or anything, but it's 50,000 words, and I think it's a pretty easy read. Lots of like interesting anecdotes and stories from people who actually knew Kobe, and a lot of stuff I think I uncovered that people have either forgotten about or perhaps never even knew.
Yeah, and I think you put out a couple pages on Twitter. I was reading that, and it was actually really interesting just to read some of the stuff on there. Like what was it about Kobe that really grabbed you?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I think it was like a breath of fresh air. Like we were saying earlier, I'm in Tennessee in the United States, and it's a conservative football crazy area. And I was a Catholic Democrat West Coast basketball fan. And when I'm getting into basketball, here comes this rookie, this skinny kid who grew up in Italy and spent some time in Philly. And he's just so cocky and so self-assured. I was like, all right, I got to hitch my wagon to this guy. And not only, I think the reason why so many people gravitated to Kobe was not just because he was an amazing generational talent, but he was a philosopher, whereas Michael Jordan was famously reserved. Kobe was always like letting us in behind the curtains, behind the scenes, Mamba mentality. And that taps into so much of what people have. Like all three of, everybody on this podcast, we have some Mamba mentality in us. Otherwise, we'd be sitting on the couch right now chilling, playing 2K. But instead, we're pushing ourselves to try to make the most of the time we have on this planet. I think that's why I connected with him. I think that's why so many people connected with him, is because he was a philosopher first and could really tapped into something that we all believe in.
That you make a good point there, Pat, because last year I got a chance to read his book, and I think we talked about it amongst ourselves as well. And it was so incredible, right? It wasn't written like a traditional autobiography, but you can see why Kobe was he became what ended up being, because like the level of preparation he talks about. And unlike a lot of people when they talk about just put in the hours, like he actually gave specific examples, right? Like he broke down a couple of plays, and you start to see the genius behind it. Or even reading the refs manual every year just to make sure you find those dead zones. So it was incredible. So yeah, absolutely, I agree. What I want to ask is, so yeah, he's that philosopher and like great player. What Why did you choose the topic that you did, sneakers?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I'm late arriving sneakerhead. Like I didn't really have the money like that, like throw down on sneakers growing up. I was just playing whatever. Like it was no biggie. And then finally, like when I was like in my mid 20s, I had a big boy job, and I was like, you know what, Kobe's on his way out. I'm gonna throw down on some of his shoes. And man, sneakers are an addiction. Like I did not know that when I bought my first pair. But as soon as you get another pair, you're like, all right, cool. What's next? So I got into that. I got really into his shoes. And also, I just thought, there's already, a few Kobe biographies out there. And I thought that had been covered. And I just knew what a strong relationship Kobe had with sneakerheads. Like, other than Michael Jordan, I think he has the second most popular basketball sneaker line in the world. And I just, I kind of thought to myself, like, I'd be furious if anybody else wrote this other than me. And so again, like I just typed it out just so fast. Like I was waking up in the middle of the night because I had to get this out there before anybody else did, because I wanted to be the guy to do this. It's kind of crazy, but I'm glad I did it.
What did it feel like when you finally saw, like, not only the fact that you finished the product, but once you saw it available on Amazon, and you realized, man, people can actually buy this right now. What was that feeling like?
It was a crazy mix of emotions, a lot of relief. It's still sinking in that it's available, and it's so dope seeing people buy it and seeing people give me feedback already. Like it's super exciting. And I don't know about y'all, but like I'm an instant gratification guy. And writing a book is the exact opposite of instant gratification. Like I'm used to writing articles or like a podcast, boom, 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 get some likes, retweets, and like I feel good about myself. Whereas this, you're just grinding away day after day after day after day, and nobody sees it. And so it was a mental marathon, and it was a huge relief when I finally saw it up there. And I'm glad I'm seeing some positive reviews, and I really just hope everybody, digs it and likes it.
Yep, and for Canadians, I just took a look at Amazon Canada. The paperback is $19.99, and the Kindle edition is about $7.50. So if you have a Kindle, very reasonably priced. And yeah, anything cool. I found that after he retired, the brand, I always felt that, or you have a guy like LeBron and MJ really maximized their brands while they played. Kobe was very much an introvert in his prime years, and I think maybe about 2009, 2010, he really started coming out of his shell a lot more. And like you said, he became a philosopher, and the way that his death impacted non-basketball fans. I mean, I read his book, which was incredible, and I lent it to people who are not really basketball fans, just because it's really a book about like basketball is the context, but it's really a book about motivation, staying focused, giving it your all, and just the little steps you can take to improve yourself, like whether that you don't even think of. Like the guy read the referee's manual, and he knew the blind spots so that referees couldn't see, so he could stand in those spots and foul guys, and he'd get away with it. Like that's the level of detail this guy went into. I don't know this day and age. I think other than maybe like a LeBron or a KD, like maybe the top guys still do it, but I don't know if that level of attention to detail a lot of players have that these days. Now it's about hitting your threes and getting your highlight reel dunks and getting your shit up on Instagram, and not like putting in the little nitty gritty stuff that won't get you noticed on highlight reels. Like Kobe really did that.
You hit the nail on the head, because at first you're right, he was reserved when he came into the league, and that's kind of the norm, and I think he was one of the first players to really open up and start showing his process, especially once he got like a little bit more comfortable in his own skin, because he had such an untraditional upbringing, Philadelphia, son of an NBA player, Italy, back to Philadelphia, basically a child star, at 17 years old. You're still not really an adult. And so you're right that I love Kobe, but he was a weirdo. Who reads the referee's handbook? Like, that's crazy. And like and I think he wrote this one Players Tribune article one time about how he just stalked Allen Iverson. He was furious his rookie year that Allen Iverson was in Philadelphia, his hometown, doing it big, crossing MJ, had his own signature sneaker, the Reebok, Rookie of the Year. And Kobe was such a weirdo, and we love it for him. And that's why you don't get to that level without being off mentally. You just don't get there. And you're right. He kind of flipped the switch. I think he got more comfortable in his own skin when he started, I guess, hit about 30, won some championships without Shaq. That's a good point.
Yeah, and I'm going to be honest with you, Pat. I was a big Kobe hater.
Okay, that's fair.
From when he came to the league. And you know what? It was because, so I think teenage years into like early 20s, Kobe was very different from what he ended up being at the end of his career. But I think the work ethic was probably always something that was just in him. And one of the big reasons that I didn't like him is because, just to compare him and bring it back to Toronto, we had Vince Carter just around that era, like the early Kobe years, and to see what Vince Carter was and could have been if there was that it's that missing thing, just that Mamba mentality. If that was built into him, I think it could have been so much more. And just to see Kobe, I'm always the type of person, and I'll throw this out there as well, because I know I saw some pictures of you in some MJ gear. I was an MJ hater too, and I've said it before on this podcast. Yeah. So I was a Heat fan when I was a kid. Miami. Sense. Yeah, and we ran into the Bulls, like we were 8th seed. We'd run into the Bulls, and MJ would kill us. Yeah. I just have a thing for hating the top guy. MJ was the top guy. Kobe, top guy. So now you're a Lakers fan too. LeBron, top guy, also. But there's I think for a lot of fans, like as he got older, there was just that respect that started to grow for him, and just because of the way he went about things. Like you guys said, like reading a referee's manual, that's something that nobody would think about. But like when you hear it, it just makes so much sense.
You're right. That's such a good point, and that's hilarious that you went from being an MJ hater, Kobe, now LeBron. But no, I feel you, and it's interesting. He went from being so hated to at the end being kind of like a lovable old underdog, like at the All-Star game and stuff. Everybody was celebrating him, and it was really such a crazy transition. That last season was so cool and bizarre at the same time. You see him coming out, and he had no legs left. He was just jacking up threes, for the most part, and he would get the occasional dunk, and people would go crazy. But yeah, you're right. I think everybody warmed up to him at the end. He humanized himself more, and everybody recognized him. All right, let's appreciate this amazing talent while he's still here. And I'm glad we were able to give him some of his flowers before he passed away.
I found that where people the transition was, I think, first of all, after he won those titles without Shaq, probably relaxed him a little, let him open up. And at the same time, that's when the decision happened. And even though the Celtics were kind of the first super team, big three, that the super team, the sort of super team era really became popular when LeBron, Wade, and Bosh came together in Miami. Everybody hated them. And then all of a sudden, we looked to a guy like Kobe who stayed there forever and tried to get it done, stayed in the late. Now, he did almost leave. There were a couple of times he was ready to leave. He had demanded a trade. He even considered going to the Clippers, of all places. Funny story, Jerry West actually told him, fine, you're going to leave, you don't go there and play for that owner. But anyway, so he did almost leave a few times, but he didn't. He stayed, they won. And I think that level of people started seeing that, hey, wait, he's a true competitor, and maybe LeBron and these other guys aren't at his level because they're all trying to come together to win rather than just figuring out on your own and bringing in supporting guys. I mean, Kobe had played with great players. I mean, after Shaq left, Kobe played with some great players, but never that true like superstar franchise player type guy. And that respect grew. And it's funny, people used to criticize Kobe for always wanting the last shot and shooting over double teams and all that. They criticize LeBron now for making the pass. Like, whoa, Kobe or MJ would have taken that shot no matter what. It's like, so what do you want? And Magic used to make that pass. That LeBron does the same thing as Magic, but they criticize LeBron. So it's just funny how when you're at top, you just get criticized no matter what you do.
That's such a good point. I didn't think about the effect that the big three in Miami had on, that did kind of lend some popularity and get some heat off Kobe. That's a good point. I had never even thought about that, but that's a good point. And you're right. Like, I love like the Christmas Day game. I think it was like 2011, 2012 when Kobe was playing against the Bulls, and it was like he took a 1-on-5. It's like, bro, please pass it. Like Pau Gasol's over there, and now LeBron's catching heat. And full disclaimer, I was a LeBron hater until he became a Laker. But yeah, man, you just they're different guys, and GOAT conversation aside, like. They have different styles, and Kobe's not going to be MJ, LeBron's not going to be Kobe. Just respect greatness and stop hating and just start appreciating.
So since you mentioned that GOAT conversation, and I know this has been coming up recently, especially with LeBron getting what some people are saying is a soft title, which I don't necessarily agree with. But I mean, you've had like connections to the three greats, like of the three. If you have that last shot, or if you're building a team around one of them, who are you picking? Kobe, LeBron, or MJ?
First, let's set LeBron aside. Let's let him finish his career, because right now, if he continues on the path he's at, he could definitely be the GOAT. Man, y'all really gonna make me say it. I think you can't. I think every generation has their own GOAT. There are different rules. There are different play styles. I forgot how incredible Michael Jordan was until The Last Dance, because I was around for like the last half of his career. I remember like the Sonics, Jazz, 96, 97, 98 championships. I think right now Jordan still got to be the GOAT. I'm gonna put Kobe at a close number 2, and then let's see where LBJ's at when he finishes his career. He could easily be on top. I just want to see him finish his career before I make that judgment. Lay it on me. Go ahead, hurt my feelings. What y'all's?
I'm with you. I think I believe that. So a couple. First of all, I don't believe that this LeBron's title was a soft title. I think winning it in the bubble in many ways was harder. Opponents aside, being like a lockdown, stuck in a hotel, or just you can't see your family. You have no freedom to go out, or you have a bad game and you don't have anywhere to go to sort of decompress and get away from it. It became harder. It became more mentally taxing. So for that, and we saw part of the reason the Clippers blew it is because those guys didn't want to be there in the first place. So I think this title is as legitimate as every other one he won. LeBron, that is.
And everyone had the equal chance, right? It's not as if you put him in that particular spot and you just run with like every team in the bubble had to go through whatever. So whoever had ended up, it was the Lakers at the end, but whoever had won league, they would have faced the same questions that it's a soft title. So I really don't agree with that.
I would still put MJ over Kobe. I think that if you just look at the numbers, MJ was a little more efficient with some of those numbers, and MJ was first to sort of be that guy, and Kobe copied the move, so you have to go with the originator.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, either of the three, if you're grabbing any of the three, any NBA franchise is going to be well ahead of anybody else. So like you can't really go wrong with either of the three. But yeah, for me, it's MJ, Kobe, LeBron, and I mean LeBron, Kobe. I think I might, depending on where that career ends up for LeBron, I think maybe he might pass Kobe. But honestly, like you're splitting hairs. You're not going wrong either way.
That's fair. All right, Azam, you're quiet over there. Who's your top three?
I think you've got to go with MJ. So I've appreciated LeBron probably more than Kobe over the last little while, but again, yeah, it's really splitting hair, right? Like, what are you looking for? I'm just gonna go with LeBron just because I enjoy watching him more. But yeah, there's no wrong answer here. But your go guy would always be MJ.
And then LeBron, it's tough. I mean, I think he will end up being ahead of Kobe when all is said and done. I mean, I think just look at the fact that he's in year 17. He was second in MVP voting. Like the minutes the guy's put on over the years, he hasn't had any major injuries. The longevity, like that's why I think that people like always when they talk about the GOAT and all that, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar gets ignored. A guy who won 5, was a defensive monster, all-time leading scorer, and played into his 40s at a high level.
Yeah.
So I think that longevity matters, and LeBron, if he wants to, I think he can get to 40 at a high level. So I would put that. That's why I would put him ahead of Kobe for that, in that regard. That just because I mean he's a beast. Like he's a physical special.
That's totally fair. Hey, I gotta ask y'all. Y'all from Toronto. What was y'all's reaction to the 81-point game back in 2006?
Okay, so I still remember watching it. I was sitting with my brother. Like I can't remember what he had at the half, but we're just looking at each other. We're like, "Is this for real? Like, how is this even happening?" And then I think we turned it off somewhere in the third quarter because we're like, "This is garbage." Like the game was probably still close if I remember correctly. But like just the way he was going off, like it was frustrating to watch. And then we came back like 10 minutes later because we're those type of people who were like, no, we can't miss this and miss history. But like it was, for me, being such a big Raptors fan, and at that point I wasn't a big Kobe fan, but for me it was frustrating. It was really maddening.
Yeah.
I didn't really have a reaction but here's the thing, the Raptors actually had the lead in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
So what's crazy is that had the Raptors won that game, the narrative would have been Kobe's being selfish. He took all the shots for himself.
Mm-hmm.
So when it was done, I was kind of like, oh, we blew it. It was more like, holy shit, he got 81 points, but oh, we blew this game. But the Raptors were terrible at that time anyway.
Yeah.
So that was like, they were clearly in tank mode then. So I didn't really have that reaction. But then the media started making a big deal. Kobe got 81, Kobe dropped 81. And over the years, it's just that the legend of that game fully grew. It really grew and became, I think it feels a lot bigger than it really was in the moment, because it's not like he just destroyed the team. Like Raptors almost won that game. No. So had the Raptors won, it would have had a completely different narrative. But now I look back and I'm like, holy shit, we gave up 81 points. But I mean, we were terrible back then anyway. So I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah, that's interesting because I didn't watch the game live, and that's because I was working back then. And Pramit remembers from our time we used to work shifts. We had an interesting role back then. And for me,
before that, actually, this was in our university days.
Yeah. Well, you hadn't started back then?
No, I hadn't started back
then. Okay, so I was still working. But you know when I was working. So, I mean, I was in that late shift, and I was just refreshing my browser every now and then just for the updates, right? And so the focus for me was always, what the tally is and like the score going back and forth. So I really didn't pay attention to 81 points at that moment. And it really didn't hit me until the next day when everyone started talking about it. Because, I mean, not watching the game, like I was just, worried about what the score was at that point. And then once you go past that, I was like, yeah, oh, shit, it was 81 points that he put up. Like,
I think Jalen
but it
Rose.
wasn't a surprise either. I mean, like knowing the Raptors back then. So
Yeah, they weren't who they are now, man. But I think Jalen Rose and Chris Bosh and them get such an unfair rap. Like they just went up against the monster that night. You know, it happens. If you play basketball, you're going to get dunked on. You're going to get crossed over. Sometimes somebody might drop 81 on you. You know, so it just happens.
Not very often though.
Not often, but it could. It may happen once in a lifetime.
It was one of those things where it was like if it was gonna in that era of the Raptors, if it was gonna happen to anybody, it was gonna happen to the Raptors. Like that's how it felt, and I honestly don't think I appreciated it because and I've said this before about Jordan and probably LeBron too. Like you don't appreciate some of these things until way later, and Prem, you kind of alluded to that like it felt bigger as the years went on. And like I kind of wish that I had sit back and enjoyed it a little bit more, but I'm just one of those people where I'm so hardcore about my team that like if somebody's dropping 81 on me, like I'm not going to be happy. Of course not. What did you feel like when you saw that?
I didn't watch it live. It was a regional game, so it wasn't picked up out
Right.
where I was living. And this was again before you wake up and check your, there were no iPhones, so you didn't check your phone in the first thing in the morning. We weren't addicted to technology, so like I wake up. It's the one morning somehow I didn't watch Sports Center, so I get to school first block, everybody's saying 81, 81. And I was like, what? No, this can't be real. And then finally they were like, yeah, bro. Like they're pulling up on the desktop in our classroom, like 81 points. And I was like, man, this guy's
one thing I find interesting about these things among people is, how quickly people start just talking about, yeah, but he's no Jordan. Like, you don't appreciate the game for it. Like, I remember the next day, you're out standing in your breaks and you're talking to guys at work, and yeah, he's no Jordan. Like that's the first question. Or maybe because we were all Raptors fans and it kind of hit us. So it was interesting that no one talked. The actual game was like, yeah, but he's no Jordan, right? So
yeah, just some haters. So, what's so weird? Y'all will appreciate this. I was in Atlanta on Martin Luther King Day. The Hawks were hosting the Raptors this past year, and Norman Powell went off for like 30 points. And in the moment, I was like, dude, this guy's unstoppable. And there's a 30-point game. Like I couldn't imagine an 81-point game because like even the Hawks fans were like, man, Norman Powell's going off right now. And I walked past their locker room after, and like they were just hooping and hollering and going crazy. I was like, man, I couldn't imagine like a 60-point game or something if what everybody be acting like.
Well, yeah, and I remember it kind of with when we had Vince, like it was when he would score 25 and a half, like it felt like everything was going in. And like, sometimes he'd get to 50 and it felt like it was really easy for him to get there. So like with an 80-point game, it's just like the amount of things that have to go right, the amount of shots that you have to get up, like even thinking back to Wilt Chamberlain scoring 100, I know like, I know completely different era, but like the things that you have to do to get that many shots and to have that kind of game, it's just insane.
You brought up Vince Carter earlier, and I glossed over it. Man, Vince Carter and Tracy McGrady, both of them, at the beginning stages, there wasn't a big difference between Kobe and Vince and T-Mac. Like they're all on the same level.
Mm-hmm. And funnily enough, Kobe came out years later and said, "If Vince and Tracy stayed together, we would have played them in the finals. Eventually, Lakers, Raptors would have been in the finals in the early 2000s."
Maybe if Vince Carter has, I hate to like question somebody's work ethic, but he wasn't far off. T-Mac, if he stays healthy, like they're in.
Don't get Ron started on that. Don't get Ron going on Vince.
Pat, you're singing my song right now, man. Like I've been saying this, and we like Pram and I have gone back and forth on this forever. Like that's the big thing about Vince. It was the work ethic. Like he's come out and said it. People have defended it. Like I've been reading We the North, and like in that book, the author like defends Vince because they're friends. So I get it. Like, and I'm sure like Vince got a little bit of a bad rap here. It wasn't all his fault, but man, like had he put in 10%, 20% more work, what could have been? I hate to think about it, and just hearing the name, just oh man.
Yeah. he had such an acrimonious breakup too, man. Like wasn't, always easy between Toronto and Vince Carter.
It was toxic.
Uh,
I haven't read We the North
like, is it
yet.
still kind of mixed up there?
For the most
Yeah,
part,
is
they've
it still kind of
forgiven
mixed
him.
up there? Or
He's been. For the most part, I was at the Hawks Raptor game. This was actually the first Raptors game in Toronto after Kobe's death.
Oh wow!
So they did the Kobe tribute at the beginning
Yeah.
of the game. Vince comes into the game off the bench. He gets a standing ovation.
Nice.
That same night, Kyle Lowry became the all-time assist leader for the Raptors. So Kyle gets a standing ovation, and Vince was out of the game at that point, gets up, walks over to the Raptor bench and congratulated Lowry. And so for the most part, he's been forgiven. I think with over time, what happened, in the moment, they hated him. He got heat like no tomorrow. But then as the team continued to suck and suck and suck, before the team got sold, and then they bring in Nasai and turn it up. But I think fans started realizing, wait, this place is just bad. Like, these guys just are terrible. No matter what. Vince quit on them. But hey, I mean, I think we've all had times where we're working with a bad employer or a bad company. We're just thinking, why are we here?
Yeah, and even the front office back then, like Babcock, right? Like, it just wasn't a very competent front office to begin with. There were issues all around.
Hoffa, we had drafted. We had the 7th overall pick, and they drafted Hoffa.
Oh, who did they pass on? I don't remember.
Iguodala was taken next.
Man,
that's the big one. Yeah. I mean, we had some bad drafts. We had some really bad drafts. Like
Raptors bad drafts. We can have a good episode on that.
There was a time in like the late 2000s, I feel like were y'all competitive, and y'all had like the most European team ever. It was like the United Nations.
That was by design.
So that was like Brian Colangelo's whole thing, bringing Europe. I mean, the Spurs had a lot of international players as well, but I found that the Spurs found like really, really good ones.
Okay.
And we had guys we were overpaying guys like, who are the Linus Kliza, and we were bringing in guys that just weren't good.
Yeah.
But like, we're going to play this like Euro ball, because at that time, that's when like Steve Nash really was popular, like with the Sun system, moved the ball a lot. A lot of those concepts were taken out of Europe, and they tried to bring it here, but they didn't have enough skill.
But it was
Andrea Bargnani, who just didn't care. Like, so
it was more than that though, right? Like in that era, it was like I see, like I'm still I love Colangelo. Like Pat, I worked for the Raptors during that era, from like the end of the Vince Carter era up until like 2009, where I actually got, as you said, a big boy job. So like I remember what was going on. I remember a lot of the talk around the organization, and it was just like, it was hard to attract anybody to come here. Like there was the whole like misconceptions about how hard it was to cross the border and to get back into the country when you're coming from a road trip. And like, so it was a concerted effort to try to bring in Euros who would actually want to be here, rather than somebody from the US who, kind of looked at being in Toronto as like, being banished to Siberia.
Yeah, and I remember Colangelo's interview around that time. He said, it's hard to convince a kid from Kentucky to come over where you can't even watch ESPN on a day-to-day basis and stuff like that. So there was a whole lot of stuff that was going on. So,
but I think I changed that tune. Like, first of all, you can get ESPN if you want it. Like, second of all, I mean, these guys can afford to pay for it, so it's not a big deal.
Exactly. Yep.
And the taxes. What's funny, that the tax situation. Yeah, the taxes between Ontario versus like a California or New York aren't that different. But Kyle Lowry brought up a good point, actually. You're being paid in US dollars, but you're spending Canadian dollars, and the Canadian dollar is lower. So, yeah, like there is the tax situation, but there are enough strategies in place to minimize that. And you could still have a lower overall cost of living, like buying a really nice place for a couple of million in Toronto, which may be 4 million in LA or 4 million plus in New York, and Toronto, maybe you could save $1 million on a place. So there are benefits to it. I do think the Drake factor has helped.
I was about to say it. Yep. Drake in the weekend, like now Toronto's the place everybody wants to be.
Yep.
Have you been, Pat? Have you ever been to Toronto?
Sadly, no. I want to, like, once the pandemic's over, like I for real want to go to Toronto, because like you said, like it was like this misconception that like y'all are Vancouver or something, and y'all are just like way out in the middle of nowhere. And now it's just like, man, like Toronto's popping. Like, what were we thinking this whole time? Like, I don't see why it's not a free agent destination.
I think you kind of learn that once you have a good team, like a lot of those narratives fall by the wayside, right? Like when you have, like you've been able to attract players now, you won a championship, you see other sports franchises doing better as well. So it's a little bit easier. I think you like all those narratives get built up as, somewhat, some of it partly true, but some of it is a lot of justification for all the failures you've had over the years as well, I think.
And I was reading about how agents are now, especially guys that are looking to rebuild their are directing their guys to Toronto.
Mhm.
Like somebody like a Rondé Hollis Jefferson signs a 1-year deal because of the strong player development system that they would have. Like they could make him look really, really good. So then he could go back out into the market again, make more money, and other players are thinking, hey, I could go spend a year there. In the mentality could be almost like going overseas almost, but you're still in the league. But spend a year there. They got an incredible player coaching staff, player development system. They will They will put me in a position to look good, and then I can, whether they pay me, if they pay me, great. If not, I can make my money somewhere else, and it was worthwhile. So when free agency opens, I wonder, because the Raptors have some decisions to make. So I wonder if they're going to pick up sort of scrap heap guys and rebuild them for a year and then set them free elsewhere.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think y'all really got a lot going on. I could see free agents wanting to go there. And since we're having a full-blown Raptors conversation, can we talk about Serge Ibaka and OG Anunoby and that show they had, the fashion show?
The scarves?
Yeah, scarves.
What about scarves? Those guys, man, like it's funny seeing OG kind of like in that, because like from when he came into the league, he was such a like he was the worst interview and the best interview at the same time, just because of how like his face would not change, his answers were very plain Jane, but like it was, and to see him actually show a little bit of personality in that, it was awesome.
That was so funny. That was like my favorite thing for like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And like, I'm a forever OG Anunoby fan since then.
Oh yeah. His payday's coming too, a year away.
Definitely. So, Pat, I want to bring it back to the book a little bit and just talk about Kobe sneakers in general. Like, you mentioned earlier that, it's always been like, the MJ sneakers have always been the big thing. But, lately over the past few years, I think the Kobe line, especially with Nike now doing the Protros and, like what is it about the Kobe line that's kind of like made them so popular with people?
That's a great question because it doesn't have the crossover appeal that for casual use that Jordans do. And like, it's hard, to pull off Kobe's when you're just walking around or going out on a date or something. So I guess, they were always like on pushing the envelope on technology and, always, had the newest research and design they were implementing. And I don't know, I just think it's something like you lace them up, you just feel different, man. You just feel like you're a problem on the court. And like I write about this in the book in the first few pages, like I just feel like a different guy when I'm wearing Kobe's. Like I feel tougher, meaner, like I'm ready to like scream at my teammates. I'm ready to put up some like crazy shots. I don't know why it is, but they look awesome on court and the technology is even better than the way they look. So that's my guess, but somebody smarter than me would have to figure it out.
So while writing this book, you've taken a lot of detailed account. Was there any moment where you're like, like I didn't know that, like something that was glaringly surprising to you, and then you're like, yeah, that's interesting. Like I'm just curious about the whole process, how you went through, right? So
yeah, there two of the most interesting interviews came from Rudy Garcidones. He was the former Lakers equipment manager. He was there from Magic Johnson till 2011. And he shared some really interesting stories about, again, Kobe's constantly pushing for more, whether it's like the Nike marketing team, Nike design team, or even the equipment manager. He wants to wear certain things on court, which at the time, like you got to wear team colors, you got to do this, constantly pushing. So those stories were funny. And then the second, one of my favorite interviews was the former Lakers strength and conditioning coach, Tim DeFrancesco. And again, constantly pushing him for more. And DiFrancesco was there during the most difficult part of his time, from like of his career, from like 2011 to retirement. So he was there with him through the Achilles and everything. And DiFrancesco shared a pretty interesting story about Kobe's global popularity, about basically how they're going through, I think they're in England for some preseason games, and fans are walled off on the side of the street. The car goes through and they just collapse behind them. And, just unfathomable the level of popularity Kobe had, globally. And then also DiFrancesco was talking about that final season, how the players were starting to figure out, hey, I need to get some stuff signed. And it started in a couple games after he had announced his retirement. And Robert Sacre was the first player to try to start getting some shoes signed or start getting something like a sweatband or something he wore. So Rudy G, the equipment manager, and Tim DiFrancesco, the strength and conditioning coach, were two of my favorite interviews. Like they enlightened me to a lot of things I didn't know.
Did the pandemic make it easier or harder to write this book, do you think?
A little bit of both. Easier because can I cuss?
Yeah. Hell yeah.
I was fucking fired, from my day job. So I had all the time in the world, but at the same time is mentally, I'm a hypochondriac, and, I'm freaking out, and like testing in America is slow, but, the cases are soaring, and I'm super freaked out about that. And I was crazy stressed, but at the same time, I had nothing but time on my hands. So a little bit of both, easier and harder at the same time.
Yeah, because I imagine it might be easier, like in terms of getting some interviews, because people are probably home.
Yeah.
So there might be more receptive to doing it.
That's a good point. People were, at home, and I think people were more open to like email interviews and Zoom calls and that sort of thing. I think if it had been business as usual, we lost his on. There it is.
You didn't like the Zoom chat, the Zoom talk.
No. My wife almost came into
business as usual. Yeah, I think if it had been business as usual, I think people would have been just, a little bit too, they've been busy doing their own things, living their own lives. So that's a good point. I think people had more free time as well.
Do you have a specific Kobe shoe that's your favorite? Like I looked through your profile. I know I saw some fire red Jordan 3s that you were wearing. I think I saw some Kobe 11s. Are the 11s your favorite? Because I think I saw them a couple times.
The 11s are always going to hold a special place in my heart. I was late arriving to being a sneakerhead, so I love the Kobe 11s. Like those are really what got me into it. The Kobe 6 for me is I'm really excited about that. They're going to be protroing that soon. And then like the Kobe 9 Elite, the high top, man, like I remember seeing that on the early days of Instagram. Like I remember being like, whoa, like what's he doing now? This guy's crazy. Yeah. So Kobe 6, Kobe 9 Elite. What about y'all? Y'all got some?
So I've owned two pairs. So the second pair of which was I think the first actual Kobe's, the KB8s. Nice. I owned those when I was a kid, and actually it wasn't even like I didn't buy them because like you, like I didn't have money for sneakers. I like maybe a couple times my parents bought me some really nice sneakers, but those ones a friend gave them to me. They were I think size 12s. I'm a 9.5 or a 10. I'm like, I don't care. I'm wearing these. They felt because they still felt good. Yeah. My favorite though, and only because it was the first pair of Kobe's that I actually bought, and it's the last one I actually owned. Because like you said, they don't have the crossover appeal, so I couldn't wear them out and wear them on the court. So I usually needed shoes for both. So the first pair of actual just ball shoes that I bought were the second Kobe's with Nike. So I think they were the ones with the strap. They were like
the Kobe 2. Well,
yeah, it was a Kobe 2. Yeah.
Yeah, the Kobe 2, and he also had some hyper dunks and some 2K4s with straps. Yeah. But I'm thinking probably the Kobe 2.
It was the ankle support on them was just insane, and I have weak ankles. I've sprained my ankle like 40, 50 times. So those ones are probably my favorite, only because they looked bulky, they looked heavy, but they played a lot different. Like you said, like it just changes your mentality on the court.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So I don't own a pair of Kobe's. I own some MJs. Nice. I have some issues with my feet, so I'm very sensitive about what shoes I buy. But the one pair I'm looking at especially because they're on sale in some places right now, are the Mamba Furies.
Nice. Very cool.
Those look to have that crossover appeal of either if you're going to work out in them, play in them, or just walk down the street.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's kind of that is definitely the one pair I want to get. That could be a Black Friday purchase for myself, because I need to give the Kobe's a try. See, I was very when he died, I was feeling very nostalgic and was shopping online. Everything was sold on. Am I going to overpay? Am I going to overpay? Am I going to go resale? I'm like, no, I'll wait. I'll wait it out, and then maybe that'll be a Black Friday purchase.
I think that's a sound investment.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever. No, well, not. I don't think I've never owned a pair of sneakers. I'm not a sneakerhead personally. But listening to you all talk about it, I think I'm kind of feeling it. Maybe Black Friday, first time.
I think that's the idea.
Like Pat, like you said, man, it's one of those things where you buy them, you buy one pair, and like I went off earlier this year and I started buying a couple, and I bought, I think, 5 or 6 pairs of sneakers within like a 3-month span or something. It's dangerous. It's real dangerous, but Kobe's, like, I'll probably eventually get myself a pair of Kobe's. Like I was looking at the Kobe 5s when they protroed those, and I was thinking about it, but I wasn't sold on them just because some of the colorways for me are the big thing. But I think Kobe 11s are probably something I get. Like one thing that I loved is when DeMar was here, and even with the Spurs, like DeMar's Kobe sneaker game was tight. Always had a nice pair, always.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
So actually, another thing that I wanted to ask about Kobe sneakers specifically were the last 2 pairs that he had with Adidas.
Okay.
Thoughts on those?
All right. So they were basically the straw that broke the camel's back. There were a couple different issues. One, as it was detailed in one of Kobe's biographies by Roland Lazenby, like it was hard to make, it was stiff. And then 2, Vanessa was cooling off on Adidas. She wasn't a fan of the company. And 3, Joe Jellybean Bryant was no longer an employee of Adidas. He was no longer getting money. So all those things kind of factored in. And Kobe was just so unhappy with that. It's weird. Like, I think they're kind of cool, but at the same time, they're kind of ugly. And then they still look futuristic. They came out 20 years ago, and they still look like something from the future for 20 years. So that's pretty cool. That's got to count for something. What are y'all's thoughts?
Okay, so I don't know if you guys have had a chance to see these, Azam and Pramit. Pramit, you probably remember
them
a little bit better.
Yeah, the Kobe 2s.
They look like the Roadster, the Audi Roadster.
Yeah. So to me, they kind of get, they're super ugly. I hated them when they came out when I was a kid. I didn't understand. Some people had them, and I'm like, what you spent money on those? They kind of give me like a shoe right now that's kind of similar. Is the Yeezy foams, where they sold like crazy. They look like a mess, but like for whatever reason, people like them.
Yeah.
They look like to me that somebody forgot, like the shoes were covered up in a bit and people forgot to take the bag off.
That's fair.
That's what they look like to me. Like, oh my God. But that's the 90s. There was some crazy stuff. I remember Reebok at that time was coming out with them crazy these really big clunky shoes. I think that was the style back then. So
the Shaqs. The Shaqs and the Kemps were all clunky.
Yeah, but the Shaqs needed to be. I mean, big dude,
big man.
Big shoes.
No, absolutely. Kobe was at the end of his Adidas contract, and they were planning the Kobe 3 with Adidas, and he had a meeting in Germany, and I believe my interpretation of it, Adidas was expecting, a nice meeting. They laid out not only a sneaker line for the future, but a clothing line for the future. And Kobe arrived in Germany and was having none of it. Like, was totally cold, like didn't want to be there, you could tell. And that's what led to sneaker free agency, which everybody, loves too. So he changed the course of sneaker history like a couple times.
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad he made that move, because I remember as a kid, once he made the move over to Nike, I remember it was a big deal. It was a huge deal. It's like Kobe's going to Nike, and I've always been a Nike guy. Yeah. For a while, Reebok, just because of AI. I was a big AI fan as a kid, and the questions were, those are my favorite all-time shoes. Are Kobe's your favorite all-time shoe, or do you still put Jay's ahead of those?
Oh no, Kobe's are always going to be my favorite. Even like I can't pull them off casually at all. Like it's tough already for a white guy out here to look fashionable at all, and wearing some Kobe's like really makes it tough. But I don't care. Like it just it's in my heart. You know, I love them.
So one last question. We've been going for a while. I don't want to keep you for too long. I got to get back to my kids eventually. But I saw a picture of you. I think it was your senior year, in your basketball gear.
Yeah.
You weren't wearing Kobe's. Did you ever ball in Kobe's in high school?
Sadly, no, man. Those were just some team shoes,
Yeah,
but they
yeah.
look kind of like the Kobe too because they came out around that same time. They had the strap and everything. Man, that picture, that don't go back and look at that picture. That
No,
was,
no, no. It was a good one actually. Like, so it led me to think. What were your averages in your senior year?
well, I missed my senior year. I had shoulder surgery because I dislocated my
man.
shoulder 5 times in high school, so it just kept popping out till finally they had to fix it. And then I was a European like 3-point shooter before it was cool. Like at the time, they kept being like, "You're 6'5", go down low, go down low." I was like, "Fuck that, man! If you're 6'5", you know you're a shooting guard in the NBA." So I kept trying to like pop out and shoot threes. And these small-minded redneck Republicans weren't having it. So I was fucking buried on the bench.
Oh, so you were Bargnani before Bargnani was Bargnani.
Oh, Bargnani was way more physical than I was. I didn't want.
I've never heard anybody ever say that ever.
I'm not rebounding. I'm not playing defense. I'm going to go stand over here. You give it to me. I'm going to just try to pop.
You're
it
like Kyle Korver.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, we'll say Kyle Korver just to be nice. Like whoever's like the least physical like gunner in the world, like yeah, I'll go. I'm like
Kyle Korver has his moments where he'll. Did you dive on the floor for the ball?
Yeah, and that's why I dislocated.
Okay, so Korver does that a lot.
Yeah, that's where that started.
There you go.
I was gonna say Novak, but I like the Korver comparison.
Yeah, but nobody knows Novak except for like us. Because he was the guy we got in the Bargnani trade, one of the guys along with the picks.
Send me on Twitter your most European, most finesseful, no contact player. Like that's me, and that didn't really jive.
What's funny is that a lot of these there is that misconception that they aren't physical, and that's not
right.
They can't like I mean, Goran Dragic talks about like I grew up in Slovenia. That playing there is pretty crazy. Shaq actually tells a story about how when they were in Phoenix, and Shaq's like, there's 2 guys that I was able to haze, and they were having none of it because and I couldn't break them. Kobe and Goran.
Wow, and that's a good point. And even Jeff Van Gundy said in a pod, he's like, dude, like international basketball is way more physical than the NBA, and that's such a shitty stereotype, which I'm playing into. But you know the stereotype. But basically, yeah, I mean, like that's why they're sending grown ass men over here like Luka Doncic who are just balling up. You know, American players. So you're right, European. It's I shouldn't shit on them, but the old stereotype. Then yeah, that was me.
I think it's changed. I think a lot, we in Toronto have that stereotype because of those late Colangelo years. Like they were getting like we talked about earlier. They were getting Europeans, just not very good ones. Mm-hmm. So rather than just thinking, okay, these guys aren't skilled enough, or like, oh, they're too soft.
Yeah.
Or really, they just weren't good enough.
Maybe so. I was like a shitty Andre Karolinko.
Oh, I loved AK-47.
I loved
AK-47.
I loved him. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I misspoke earlier. So Azam, you can or Ron, you guys can edit out what I said earlier about the price of the book. In Canada, I think I was looking at the US Amazon site. So in Canada, the paperback is $26.24. The Kindle edition is $9.99. Still very reasonably priced. If you have an e-reader, $9.99 is very, very reasonably priced. So anybody, if I mean, anything,
you want to give us
the more we learn, the more we're blown away by him, the more we're impressed by him. So any Kobe story is a good story.
Yeah. So before we go, Pat, any closing thoughts? Anything you want? Actually, plug your book too. Just remind people how they can get it.
Yeah, man. So Kobe Bryant Sneaker History, 1996 to 2020, written by Pat Benson. You can find it on Amazon. And other than that, man, I appreciate y'all having me on. This was so much fun. Like I've been hitting up a few different podcasts, and this was without a doubt the most fun. And man, I'm just a fan of y'all. And y'all got a listener for life in me. Just keep doing what y'all are doing.
Thanks,
you ever want to come back.
We have some very loyal listeners in, well, most of our podcasts, and we obviously are listeners in Canada and to an extent in the United States, but we have some loyal following in Ireland, Germany, UK, Singapore, and Denmark. So if you see a boost in Nike sneaker sales, we know who to thank, Pat. So.
Oh, that's awesome. I appreciate it. Well, yeah, anytime y'all want to talk about like mid-2000s basketball, I'm down.
Or maybe when the season starts, you can come on. We can talk about what's going on in the early parts of the season. We now have
some Hawks too.
Yeah, man, y'all just give me a shout. I appreciate it so much, and I appreciate this. And like I said, y'all got a fan for life.
Appreciate it, Pat. Thank you very much for your time. And so that's it for today. Thanks again for listening to Boxing One. As always, make sure you follow us on Instagram, Twitter at Boxing One Pod. Also, make sure you subscribe on YouTube if you're watching, and subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, pretty much anywhere you listen. We really appreciate it. Love the comments, love the listening. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Wear your masks.
Yes.